old house in Paris that was covered with vines lived 12 little girls in 2 straight lines. They left the house at 9:30 in 2 straight lines in rain or shine. The smallest one was Madeline. She was not afraid of mice. She loved winter, snow, and ice. To the tiger in the zoo, Madeline just said, "Pooh-pooh," and nobody knew so well how to frighten Miss Clavel. Until the day she slipped and fell. Poor Madeline would now be dead, but for a dog that kept its head and dragged her safe from a watery grave. From now on, I hope you will listen to me. And here is a cup of chamomile tea. Good night, little girls. I hope you sleep well. Good night, dear Miss Clavel. Miss Clavel turned out the light. After she left, there was a fight about where the dog should sleep that night. The new pupil was ever so helpful and clever. The dog loved biscuits, milk, and beef, and they named it Genevieve. She could sing and almost talk and enjoyed the daily walk. Soon the snow began to fly. Inside it was warm and dry, and 6 months passed quickly by. When the 1st of May came near, there was nervousness each year, for on that day there arrived a collection of trustees for the annual inspection. The inspection was most thorough, much to everybody's sorrow. Tip, tip, whatever can that be? Tip, tip, come out and let me see. Dear me, it's a dog. Isn't there a rule that dogs aren't allowed in school? Miss Clavel, get rid of it, please, said the president of the Board of Trustees. Yes, but the children love her so, said Miss Clavel. Please don't make her go. I dare say, said Lord Cuckoo-Face. I mean, it's a perfect disgrace for young ladies to embrace this creature of uncertain race. Off with you. Go home, run, scat. Go and don't come back. Madeline jumped on a chair. Lord Cuckoo-Face, she said, beware. Miss Genevieve, noblest dog in France, you shall have your vengeance. It's no use crying or talking. Let's get dressed and go out walking. The sooner we're ready, the sooner we'll leave. The sooner we'll find Miss Genevieve. They went looking high and low, and every place a dog might go. In every place they called her name, but no one answered to the same. The gendarme said, "We don't believe we've seen a dog like Genevieve." Hours after they had started, they came back home broken-hearted. Oh, Genevieve, where can you be? Genevieve, please come back to me. In the middle of the night, Miss Clavel turned on the light and said, "Something is not right." An old street lamp shed its light on Miss Genevieve outside. She was petted, she was fed, and everybody went to bed. Good night, little girls. I hope you sleep well. Good night, dear Miss Clavell. Miss Clavell turned out the light, and again there was a fight, as each little girl cried, "Genevieve's mine tonight." For a second time that night, Miss Clavell turned on her light, and afraid of a disaster, she ran fast and even faster. If there's one more fight about Genevieve, I'm sorry, but she'll have to leave. That was the end of the riot. Suddenly, all was quiet. For the third time that night, Miss Clavell turned on the light, and to her surprise, she found that suddenly there was enough hound to go all around. In an old house in Paris that was covered with vines lived 12 little girls in 2 straight lines. In 2 straight lines, they broke their bread and brushed their teeth and went to bed. They smiled at the good and frowned at the bad. And sometimes they were very sad. They left the house at 9:30 in 2 straight lines, in rain or shine. The smallest one was Madeline. She was not afraid of mice. She loved winter, snow, and ice. To the tiger in the zoo, Madeline just said, "Pooh-pooh." And nobody knew so well how to frighten Miss Clavell. In the middle of the night, Miss Clavell turned on her light and said, "Something is not right." Little Madeline sat in bed, cried and cried. Her eyes were red. And soon after, Dr. Cone came. He rushed out to the phone and he dialed 9-10-6. "Nurse," he said, "it's an appendix." Everybody had to cry. Not a single eye was dry. Madeline was in his arm in a blanket, safe and warm. In a car with a red light, they drove out into the night. Madeline woke up 2 hours later in a room with flowers. Madeline soon ate and drank, and on her bed there was a crank, and a crack in the ceiling had the habit of sometimes looking like a rabbit. Outside were birds, trees, and sky, and so 10 days passed quickly by. One nice morning, Miss Clavell said, "Isn't this a fine day to visit Madeline?" "Visitors from 224, read a sign outside her door. Tiptoeing with solemn face, with some flowers and a vase, in they walked and then said, "Ah," when they saw the toys and candy and the dollhouse from Papa. But the biggest surprise by far, on her stomach was a scar. "Goodbye," they said. "We'll come again." And the little girls left in the rain. They went home and broke their bread, brushed their teeth, and went to bed. In the middle of one night, Miss Clavell turned on the light and said, "Something is not right." And afraid of a disaster, Miss Clavell ran fast and faster, and she said, "Please, children, do tell me what is troubling you." And all the little girls cried, "Boo! We want to have our appendix out, too." Good night, little girls. Thank the Lord you are well. And now go to sleep, said Miss Clavell. And she turned out the light and closed the door, and that's all there is. There isn't any more. In an old house in Paris that was covered with vines lived 12 little girls in 2 straight lines. They left the house at 9:30 in 2 straight lines in rain or shine. The smallest one was Madeline. One day, the Spanish ambassador moved into the house next door. Look, my darlings, what bliss, what joy. His Excellency has a boy. Madeline said, "It is evident that this little boy is a bad hat." In the spring, when birdies sing, something suddenly went zing, causing pain and shocked surprise during morning exercise. On hot summer nights, he ghosted. In the autumn wind, he boasted that he flew the highest kite. Year in, year out, he was polite. He was sure and quick on ice. And Miss Clavell said, "Isn't he nice?" One day, he climbed upon the wall and cried, "Come, I invite you all. Come over sometime, and I'll let you see my toys and my menagerie, my frogs and birds and bogs and bats, squirrels, hedgehogs and 2 cats. The hunting in this neighborhood is exceptionally good." But Madeline said, "Please don't molest us. Your menagerie does not interest us." He changed his clothes and said, "I bet this invitation they'll accept." Madeline answered, "A torero is not at all our idea of a hero." The poor lad left. He was lonesome and blue. He shut himself in. What else could he do? But in a short while, the little elf was back again and his old self. Said Miss Clavell, "It seems to me he needs an outlet for his energy. A chest of tools might be attractive for a little boy that's very active." I knew it. Listen to him play, hammering, sawing, working away. Oh, but that boy was really mean. He built himself a guillotine. He was unmoved by the last look the frightened chickens gave the cook. He ate them roasted, grilled, and frito. Oh, what a horror was Pepito! One day, when out to take the air, Madeline said, "Oh, look who's there." Pepito carried a bulging sack. He was followed by an increasing pack of all the dogs in the neighborhood. That boy is simply misunderstood. Look at him bringing those doggies food. He said, "Let's have a game of tag," and let a cat out of the bag. There were no trees, and so instead, the cat jumped on Pepito's head. And now just listen to the poor boy crying, "Oh, secours!" which you must cry if by any chance you're ever in need of help in France. Miss Clavel ran fast and faster to the scene of the disaster. She came in time to save the bad hat, and Madeline took care of the cat. Goodbye, Fido. So long, Rover. Let's go home. The fun is over. There was sorrowing and pain in the embassy of Spain. The ambassadress wept tears of joy as she thanked Miss Clavel for saving her boy. "Nothing," said the ambassador, "would cheer up poor Pepito more than a visit from next door. Only one visitor at a time. Will you go in first, Miss Madeline?" So Madeline went in on tiptoe and whispered, "Can you hear me, Pepito? It serves you right, you horrid brat, for what you did to that poor cat." "I'll never hurt another cat," Pepito said. "I swear to that. I've learned my lesson. Please believe I'm turning over a new leaf." "That's fine," she said. "I hope you do. We all will keep our eyes on you." And lo and behold, the former barbarian turned into a vegetarian, and the starling and turtle, the bunny and bat, went back to their native habitat. His love of animals was such, even Miss Clavel said, "Oh, it's too much." The little girls all cried boo-hoo, but Madeline said, "I know what to do." And Madeline told Pepito that he was no longer a bad hat. She said, "You are our pride and joy. You are the world's most wonderful boy." They went home and broke their bread and brushed their teeth and went to bed. And as Miss Clavel turned out the light, she said, "I knew it would all come out right." Lord Fimple-Fample and his wife led a foreign service life in a house with a veranda and a poodle in Uganda. Fifi the poodle mostly sat in a bed of eiderdown and satin. Twice a day she chased the cat up and down a cocoa mat, and after she looked everywhere to see if the ribbon in her hair was still there. Fifi also had a beau whom everyone was proud to know. One day, Lady Fample took a look in her engagement book. Through her reading glasses, she observed how fast time passes. Here it is, the month of May, and time to visit Dr. Gay. Lady Fample put on her hat and said, "To the airport, pet." "Young men, what is the fare to Zanzibar? I'm going there to visit my dentist twice a year." The fare is 5.20. We stop for gas here at Poenti. And at 3 o'clock you are safe and sound in Zanzibar. Here we fly into the sky. Lady Fample looked at her 16-jewel watch and said, "When we refuel, I will take you for a run in the sun." Fifi saw a cat. What do you think of that? But just in the nick of time, someone said, "This dog is mine," and took her home to his wife to cook her. "Perhaps with cabbage," said Mrs. Savage. "His skin would make a lovely hat. I am so sick of wearing cat." And the native made bum-bum on his ceremonial drum, and he searched among his wife's pots and pans and kitchen knives, while Fifi looked at the river and started to shiver, because it was filled for miles and miles with alligators and crocodiles. Poor Fifi started to cry, and then said, "Why should I die? So young and all alone and far away from home. If I ever get out of here, I promise that I never, never, never will chase another cat." An old secretary bird said, "This is the most absurd thing I have ever heard. Ashes to ashes and dust to dust. If the lions don't get you, the pythons must. Goodbye, old dear. I fear the end is very near." But just in the nick of time, someone said, "This dog is mine. And here is a handsome ransom. Here are some rings for your noses, which I always carry for such purposes." Lady Fample waved her cane at the waiting aeroplane. "Don't you dare, sir, fly away until we're there, sir." Here we are. There is your chair, a new ribbon for your hair. Dear, oh dear, we almost missed the appointment with the dentist. It was the Saturday before Easter, and Winthrop sat alone in Bunnyland, a gay, brightly painted toy village on the 6th floor of a big New York department store. The salesman looked down at Winthrop, and then he looked at the ad. It said that for $2.98, one could become the owner of a real live Easter bunny, guaranteed to be healthy, color-fast, washable, and docile. A vaporweight, hop-skip, happy animal of luxurious, silky feel. Winthrop was not the powder-puff, fluffy kind that's sold by the dozen. He was just a plain rabbit. But he was lucky. A lover of animals and a man without prejudices approached at that moment and said, "I'll take him." And Winthrop was on his way to the Upper West Side of Manhattan. The two children of the animal lover threw themselves into the proper Easter spirit. A nest was built for him. He was petted and loved and tenderly squeezed. And he was fed. Oh, how he was fed. It started with chopped chicken liver, followed by mushroom barley soup, creamed spinach, cauliflower with butter sauce, and for dessert he had rum cake, baked apple, and chocolate ice cream. His stomach was distended, and he dreamed heavily. But the next day he got lots of exercise. He was bathed, he got a small collar and leash, and was led along the sidewalk. Several times he started to hop, skip, and then suddenly performed a somersault, forgetting that he was tied, and that always brought a lot of laughs. It was on the third day of this new life that Winthrop began to doubt his good fortune. In an argument over his very body and soul, all tenderness was forgotten. Shouting, "It's my wabbit!" the little girl pulled at his ears, while the brother, screaming, "He's mine!" got a grip on his leash, and he was stretched and twisted. He heard a rushing of water like a waterfall in his aching head, and his length seemed twice what it ordinarily was. "If this keeps on, there isn't going to be any rabbit," said the father the next evening. He took the limp object of their affection and carried it out in the hall, and with some impatience he put, or rather dropped, Winthrop in a closet. The children were in the hall, pounding the closet door and setting up a howl. "I want my wabbit," they both cried now. Inside it was dark. Winthrop groped over overshoes and bumped into an electric heater. The pounding continued, and it was then that he heard the words, "There isn't going to be any rabbit." Winthrop felt cold and shuddered. After a nervous, nightmarish fit of sleep, Winthrop awoke. It was later than 10 o'clock that night before the children had got to sleep, and the heavy footfall came toward the closet. The key turned in the lock, and the man whispered to his wife to bring him a box. Winthrop wondered if it would be his coffin. He was put into it, and the lid was clamped down. A few minutes after, Winthrop found himself carried down the stairs across the street. Suddenly, the box was put down. There was a sweet smell. Maybe gas, thought poor Winthrop. It was, however, the tender, trembling perfume of narcissus, for the animal lover had deposited Winthrop in the great open world that is Central Park. Winthrop felt like running after the man and thanking him for his release. He hopped about, nibbling and drinking out of an old paper cup that had been half filled by rain. He stretched himself and then went mad with joy, running uphill and downhill. Then, in a dry and cozy corner, shaded from the glare of the street lamps, Winthrop lay down. Only one who has known how troubled life can be has a real appreciation of it when it is good, he reflected. The drowsy music of the city all around him was his lullaby. Mr. Horatio Jefferson Tompkins was in the habit of giving his dog an airing before starting the day's work. He entered the park just at 7:30. When he came to that hidden glade near 104th Street, he always stopped and first, carefully turning to see whether a policeman was about, he would undo the leash and allow the animal to stretch his legs. The whippet usually set out on his morning canter. Now he raised his right front paw, stood frozen for a moment, and looked at a rabbit. The rabbit looked at him and then quickly sat up and suddenly left as fast as he could. A race was on. across the road and down the stretch to 102nd Street, through a small forest of birch trees to 92nd Street, and then out into the wide open field. It's an old rabbit trick to vary the course and cut corners. Just as he was about to catch up on his quarry, the Whippet found himself running after nothing. And while he changed his direction, Winthrop gained time and repeated the maneuver so that the dog ran twice as much and shot past him a dozen times. And in long leaps, Winthrop ran down the bridle path toward 72nd Street. A lady of considerable weight was taking her reducing ride on a rented horse. Both of them were swaying along comfortably when Winthrop cut a sharp corner under the big mare. The horse suddenly reared, and the lady came down. The Whippet jumped clear over her, and then stopped to look for the rabbit, and he was out of sight. The Whippet, with his tail lashing, picked up the scent. It led over a small wooden bridge to a rocky island, and at the last point of that sat the rabbit. The game seemed to be up. "Don't come near me, or I'll jump," said Winthrop, who held on to the desperate idea that, after all, this might be just a game. But the Whippet dug his hind feet into the soft ground and arched his back, and the rabbit leaped. As he plunked into the water, he suddenly remembered that he couldn't swim a stroke. He found himself among the stalks of water plants. Air bubbles rose from his nose and mouth. He turned slowly and sank, and everything about him went black. As the last of a series of air bubbles, glub, glub, came up from the rabbit, the oldest and hardiest frog that inhabited the pond in Central Park, into which Winthrop had dived, sank down to him and listened to his heart. He swam to the stalk of a lily leaf and shook it to awaken his son, who had the careless habit of taking the sun stretched out on that leaf. The son dove down. "You take the front," said the father frog, taking hold of the hind legs, and with swift strokes of their powerful web-footed hind legs, they took Winthrop upward and dragged him out under the protection of some leaves. Gradually, the color came back into his ears, and he uttered the question of all those who come back from near death, "Where am I?" "Just take it easy," said the father frog. His kind eyes went from the rabbit to the son, who had climbed back on his leaf to resume his interrupted sun bath. "Don't talk if you don't feel like it," said the old frog. But Winthrop's heart was full, and he told his rescuer the last chapter of his life, going back as far as the bargain sale at which the animal lover had bought him. "Well," said the frog, "so you're finding out what it's like. Now, my boy there, he's an incurable optimist." He pointed to the lily leaf where his son reposed. "He dreams of tomorrow's summer flies. 'Don't worry, Pop,' he says to me, when everybody is engaged in extermination and they're spraying everything with DDT. Look, life is precarious. The reservoirs are drying up. Do you know we're the only two left here? Have you heard what's been going on?" The rabbit sat up, eager to hear the other story, when a shadow passed over the leaves. There was a swish and a splash. There were waves that reached up to where they sat, and the lily leaf trembled, and the young frog was gone. The bird of prey, the cormorant, was still underwater. Suddenly, he rose and took off. He had the unfortunate frog sideways in his beak, threw him up into the air, and with deadly accuracy caught him again so that he disappeared down the bird's gullet head first. For a while, there was the silence that follows lightning. Then the old frog wiped the tears from his eyes, and when, at long last, he found his voice, he sobbed, "I must have told them 1,000 times. If I told them once to stay off that leaf, now I'm all alone." "I'll stay here with you." "That's very nice. But this is no place for you. Nothing to eat here. You better move on." "Well, anyway, I'll stay tonight," said Winthrop, who had no appetite for food or further adventure. As it got dark, the old frog began to talk. "You know, at one time, this was a happy place. Parties, picnics, swimming and diving, concerts, community singing, and then comes this bird. In 1 week, everybody loses a relative, and then they all disappear. Isn't there anybody who can help?" "No," said the frog, "not us. Us frogs are too little. There's a place where you'd be safe, though." "Where's that?" "The zoo," said the frog. "The finest food, specially prepared." "How do I get there?" asked the rabbit. "The way is dangerous," said his friend. "The place is full of dogs, and you don't want to run into any more of those." "Let me think. Now, there's a man, must weigh about 200 pounds, and he has a wife who's as big as he, and they go to the west side to do their shopping because prices there are lower. And he's an animal lover, too. On the way home, they always walk through the zoo. They have a small shopping cart that he drags in back of him, and that's the way to get to the zoo safely." Just as the frog had said, the couple appeared. The rabbit said goodbye to his friend, and cautiously he approached the cart. He parted some greenery and carefully climbed inside. In a moment, he had forgotten all his troubles. In front of him stood a fat stalk of celery and a bunch of tender leeks. His nose trembled with excitement. He carefully sank his teeth into the celery. His ears were up. "Look, Mama," said the man, "the lilac bushes brown." "Yeah, everywhere you step is spring," said Mama. "You have the rabbit?" asked Papa. "I got one in the icebox." "A big one?" "Yeah. Also, if Otto and Hubert come for dinner, it's not enough. You know the appetite they got." "Why don't you make it a stew?" "Yeah, with a bunch of leeks. I dry out the new pressure cooker." "I have no confidence in this newfangled stuff. Make an old-fashioned Hasenpfeffer, mit noodles." The two wobbled along with their prisoner in tow, discussing recipes for Hasenpfeffer. Poor Winthrop, he felt as if he were already in a pot with the vegetables. At one time, the argument became particularly heated, and needing both hands to explain his point, the man left the cart leaning up against a low cement wall which held the iron bars of a cage. It smelled of hay, and it was getting dark. Winthrop parted the leaves of the celery and skipped out. Once again he had escaped, but only for a second, for from the gray shadows an unwieldy figure slowly emerged, a creature such as he had never imagined existed. It had small eyes in an immense head, and it stretched a long arm toward Winthrop. At the end of this arm, however, was no hand. There was only a finger, and this finger examined him carefully. It went all over him. As the creature came closer, he saw that its immense stomach was pink with black spots.
"Don't be scared,"
said the elephant. He reached up to where the windows of a 2-story house should be, and from a crack he brought some peanuts and a small piece of chocolate. He gave them to the rabbit and sat down in a corner, his hide scraping against the rough cement wall. He was, he said, depressed and lonesome.
"In 75 years of lonesomeness, one would think," he said, "that one could get used to it, but one doesn't."
From far away, some music floated into the cage. It was a band playing in Central Park Mall, and they played None But the Lonely Heart.
That doesn't help any either. A radio at least you can turn off, but not the band. It's good music, though. Most I like waltzes. You may not think so, but I am light on my feet. I'm a great Viennese waltzer.
He turned lightly and moved from one end of his house to the other. As he danced, his little tail swung in 3/4 time. "Very elegant," said the rabbit.
But there's no one to waltz with. See what I mean?
"I am finding out that life is not as beautiful as people think," said the rabbit. And then, by way of cheering up the lonesome elephant, he told him the story of the lonesome frog. The elephant was so moved that he had to take a bundle of hay to dry his tears, and he said,
"Frogs, nice little people. Why, it's ages since I've seen a frog. It was the winter of 1875. Yes, a little girl came to see me, and everybody fed me peanuts. But she had no peanuts. She had a little fur muff, and she put her hand in it and looked for something to give me. Of all the people who came and looked at me, she was the only one that felt how lonesome I was. And you'll never guess what she gave me. In the muff bag, she had a little frog, a green frog, the prettiest frog you ever saw. He was made of glass. One hand was on his chest, and he had his mouth open, just as if he were singing an aria from an Italian opera.
"Have you still got it?"
I'm coming to that. Well, I should have hidden it. Like a fool, I kept it around. I had it for 50 years, but one day the director comes by unexpectedly, and he sees it and takes it. Made me awful mad.
"And where is it now?"
Well, I guess my frog is still standing on that desk over in the administration building. Makes me mad every time I think about it.
He sat up a while and listened to the last piece of music, and then he softly added,
"Figuring on staying here for a while?"
"I'd like to stay, if it's all right with you," said the rabbit.
"Sure, it's all right with me. Besides, it's a zoo, isn't it? Good night."
The rabbit couldn't sleep. He lay on one side and then the other, and after a while he said, "Are you asleep?" The elephant didn't answer. The rabbit got up and went out. The lamps were lit, and there was a light in the administration building. He watched the building for a while, and then crept forward to the entrance. Swiftly he ran upstairs, hopped on the swivel chair, and from there onto the desk, emptying the frog of the paper clips with which he had been filled. He took him under his arm and raced back to the elephant's house. Now he had no trouble sleeping. The elephant was speechless the next morning.
"My beautiful little frog, my little glass frog."
Suddenly he said to the rabbit,
"I'm no longer lonesome now, because I've got you. That little frog you've been telling me about, that's the guy who should really have my frog. He needs him more than I do."
The rabbit agreed, but he told the elephant how difficult it would be to get the frog over to the pond.
"It's easy. Ever heard of PAL?"
The rabbit shook his head.
"Well, PAL, that stands for the Police Athletic League. Tomorrow they have an outing in the park. All day long there's festivities and parades, and the place is full of police. There's a parade due, marching past here about 2 in the afternoon. You get yourself right up with the big brass and march along. Nobody will dare to touch you, and when you get to the pond, you fall out. Then you wait and come back with them."
The rabbit was up early the next day. The elephant found a piece of bunting hanging in the branches of a tree, and when Winthrop was properly dressed, his friend took the glass frog down and handed it to him. Boom, boom, boom was heard in the distance.
"Tell him it's from a pal with very best wishes."
The boom, boom, boom swelled, and on came the band of the PAL. The rabbit hopped through the bars, and left, eyes straight ahead, he marched in front of 8 police captains, and right behind the commissioner. And so they came to the pond. The rabbit cut one of his sudden corners and went down to the leaves, where he waited and waited. At last the sun began setting, and the frog appeared under the leaves.
"I didn't dare come out sooner," he said. "That bird, you know, he's been here every day looking for me."
"I brought you something," said the rabbit, taking the frog out of the bright sash he was wearing.
"Oh, my darling boy."
For a moment I thought it was him. "It's made of glass," said the rabbit.
"Well, that's very nice of you to go to all that trouble."
"Well, he doesn't look so good close by. He's much better from a distance."
"Let's try it."
He took the glass one, swam out to the lily leaf, and placed it thereon.
"You are right," he said. "One could swear it was alive and breathing."
A moment later, they looked up, for a shadow had passed over the leaves above them. There was a swish and a splash. waves reached up to where they sat. The lily leaf trembled, and the glass frog was gone. The cormorant tossed the frog into the air, and as he caught it, it broke into 1,000 small splinters. The bird swallowed, and then he issued a shrill sound. He coughed and staggered on land, and suddenly fell. A few jerks of his wings, a few kicks of his legs, and he was dead. The full moon rose over the east side. It rode up over Central Park on silvery clouds, and as if an orchestra were tuning all its brasses in the reeds, the music of the frogs began to be heard. They suddenly appeared from all sides. Friends greeted friends, and there were family reunions everywhere, and also the old community singing. A quartet of the deepest basses serenaded the rabbit from the lily leaf. The only thing worthwhile in this world is to make other people happy, said the rabbit to his friend.
Anything that I can do for you?
Asked the frog. Yes, said the rabbit. Help me to find somebody to dance with an elephant.